This is Top Accurate Global News Update. I am Abiodun Mohammed. Two people were killed and their daughter was wounded on Monday in what Russia said was a Ukrainian attack on the Crimean Bridge, an artery for Russian troops fighting in Ukraine and a prestige project personally opened by President Vladimir Putin. Blasts were reported before dawn on the 19-kilometer road and rail bridge linking Russia to Crimea, which Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014. Unverified imagery showed a section of road on the bridge at split and listing to one side with metal barriers buckled. Dashcam footage showed drivers braking sharply shortly after the incident. Traffic was halted. Russian officials said Ukraine was behind what they called a terrorist attack on the bridge on the same day that Putin must decide whether or not to extend a UN brokered deal that allows the export of grain via the Black Sea. The Ukrainian military suggested the attack could be some kind of provocation by Russia itself, but Ukrainian media cited unidentified sources as saying that Ukraine's security service was behind the incident. The parents of a girl were killed and their daughter was injured in a passenger car. The girl was being treated in intensive care. Russian prosecutors said Ukrainian security services were behind the attack, which they cast as terrorism. Scorching weather is gripping three continents, wiping up wildfires and threatening to topple temperature records. Predictions of historic heat hung over swathes of Asia, Europe, and the United States on Sunday. In the Vatican, 15,000 people braved sweltering temperatures to hear Pope Francis lead prayer, using parasols and fans to keep cool. But in their black robes, priests like Francois Mbemba said they were in quote, sweating like hell. The 29-year-old said it felt hotter in St. Peter's Square than in its Democratic Republic of Congo diocese. In Japan, authorities issued heat stroke alert to tens of millions of people in 20 of its 47 prefectures as near-record high temperatures scorched large areas and torrential rain could melt other regions. National broadcaster NHK warned the heat was life-threatening, with the capital and other places recording temperatures of nearly 40 degrees Celsius. Japan's highest temperature ever, a record 41.1 degrees Celsius in Kumagaya City, Saitama in 2018, could be beaten, according to the country's meteorological agency. Oil dropped by more than 1% on Monday after weaker than expected Chinese economic growth fueled concern over demand in the world's second biggest oil consumer, while a partial restart of halted Libyan output also pressured. China's gross domestic product (GDP) grew 6.3% year-on-year in the second quarter, compared with analysts' forecast of 7.3%, with its post-pandemic recovery faltering rapidly owing to weakening demand at home and abroad. Brent crude fell $1.32 or 1.7% to $78.55 a barrel by 8:42 GMT, and US West Texas Intermediate crude dropped by $1.22 or 1.6% to $74.20 on the second straight day of losses for both contracts. Both benchmarks had notched 3 weeks of gains and touched their highest since April last week, finding support from OPEC Plus output curbs and unplanned outages in Libya and Nigeria. Oil also came under pressure on Monday from the resumption of output at 2 of the 3 Libyan fields that were shut last week. Output had been halted by a protest against the abduction of a former finance minister. Germany is confident it will have the best equipped army division amongst European NATO allies in 2025, Army Chief Alfons Myers told newsmen, as countries are scrambling to gear up their troops in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. At the moment, Berlin does not have a single combat-ready division, a military unit comprising more than 20,000 troops. It aims to have the first of 3 divisions operational by 2025, with the second to follow in 2027. In quote, "I am very optimistic that we will get it done," Myers told newsmen in an interview published on Monday, adding the division would initially have 80% to 90% of the requested personnel and that the plans were agreed with NATO. The Lieutenant General said Germany would provide 2 mechanized brigades first, a more lightly armed medium brigade later, and be reinforced by a Dutch brigade. A brigade has some 5,000 troops. Divisions are the land forces' main organizational building blocks that would be needed to handle a conflict with a peer adversary. Western nations are scrambling to rebuild and re-equip their divisions after decades spent fighting smaller wars in Iraq or Afghanistan saw them neglected, taken apart, and stripped of weapons and ammunition. John Kerry, the United States Special Envoy on Climate, has arrived in China to revive efforts to combat global warming amid weeks of record-setting heat in the Northern Hemisphere that scientists say is being exacerbated by climate change. Kerry's 4-day trip, which began on Sunday, follows 2 other high-level US visits to China this year as the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters work to stabilize a relationship strained by trade disputes, military tensions, and accusations of spying. Starting on Monday, China and the United States will have an in-depth exchange of views on climate issues, state broadcaster CCTV said on Kerry's arrival in Beijing. The envoy's bilateral talks with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, will focus on issues including reducing methane emissions, limiting coal use, curbing deforestation, and helping poor countries address climate change. Kerry and Xi, who have cultivated a warm relationship over more than 20 years of diplomacy, will also likely discuss China's objections to US tariffs and other restrictions on imports of Chinese solar panel and battery components, observers say. Kerry is the 3rd top US official after Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to visit China this year to try to re-establish a stable bilateral relationship. That is the size of top accolade global news update. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy New Week!